In this video, we're going to show you 3 ways to cut onions. We're going to begin with onion rings. Onion rings are maybe one of the easier ways. You just cut off the 2 ends, like the root ends of the onion. Of course, once you cut off the ends, you'll want to peel the skin off, get it ready for cutting. Then it's just a matter of cutting as thin or thick as slices as you'd like, depending on how thick you want your onion rings to be. I find it easier with the chef knife to keep the tip on the cutting board and cut with the back of the blade, so I have a little bit more control rather than having the knife up in the air. When I get to a part where I have to be really careful, like I am now, with cutting down through it, I'll just get it started with the blade so that I know that it's ready to cut, and then I'll push down through it. Okay, let's talk about onion half moons. Once the onion is cut in half from root to root, as I've already done here, you'll cut the ends off where the root is, and then you'll peel it, get it ready for cutting as usual. Then it's just as simple as kind of a rock and chop up and down, as you'll see here along the sides of the onion to make the half moons. I'm showing you the Santoku style knife here too, because a lot of people like that sharp point, so they can just put the point on the board and then pull the knife back through the food to cut it, as you see I'm doing here. I wanted to make sure to show you that option. With the chef knife, the white handled one I'm using here, I'm going to speed this up real quick for you. It's just a simple rock and chop. Tip on the cutting board, and you just lift the back of the blade up and down to cut through it, so that you have lots of control and you can work pretty fast. Okay, let's talk about mincing and dicing. Probably the more difficult way to do it, but once you know what you're doing, not too bad. So you cut through the onion root to root once again. Only this time, after we peel it and get it ready, we're not going to cut off both roots. We're going to cut off one, and then we're going to leave the other one there to hold the onion together while we cut. Now we're going to prep it for cutting, which means we're going to stand it up and we're going to cut down through it, but not all the way through to the cutting board. We're going to cut down through and just leave a tiny bit still towards the end so that it's still hooked to that root that's holding it together. And of course, the thicker or thinner you want your chunks to be will determine how many slices you put into the onion. So I'm making them pretty thin here to do a small dice. And so I'm going to show you here when I get through putting these initial slices into the onion. But again, not all the way through, just down to the root. So now you can see those. Then I'm going to turn it and I'm going to go same thing. I'm not going to cut all the way through it, but just back to the root and following the design on the onion. I'm going to also make slices into the onion this direction. So now we'll have done it 2 different directions once we finish putting these cuts into it. And then once we get these cuts into it, then we'll have cuts into the onion 2 different directions, but it's still being held together by the root for the most part. You can see it starts to fall apart a little, that's okay. Then you just do your normal rock and chop, tip on the cutting board, raising the back of the knife, and you just cut down through it. And you'll see, because we prepped it with those 2 different directions of cuts already, now it's basically ready. As soon as you cut down through it, it's just creating those dices for you. When I get towards the end of the onion, as you see here, I just lay it down and just continue to cut through it so I can use as much of the onion as possible, so as little goes to waste as possible. So that is mincing. And then, of course, the great thing about having a wide blade knife, whether it's the chef knife or whether it's the vegetable knife, which is like the square-shaped chopper, is that you have plenty of space on the blade so that once you're done mincing and chopping your onions, you can actually use the width of the blade to transfer those minced and diced onions into your pan or bowl or whatever you're putting them in at the moment. So I just kind of look for the bigger pieces still, give them a little chop, anything that fell out while we were cutting the onion initially. And then, like I said, I'll move all of my ends into my bowl. Easy peasy. That's 3 ways to cut onions. Hopefully that was helpful, and let us know if you have any questions or comments. We'd love to hear from you.